and see how long that lasted, guys. I'm right back to my headphones. But, anyways, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wrestling Fans Insight, February 15th here in 2026. Yeah, we apologize for not being here for the last 2 or 3 weeks. We had a lot going on personally, but I'm here with my brother William and my other tag team partner, Brian, the Hype Ballard. Brian, how's it been going?
It's going good, guys. Rumble's passed, and we are in WrestleMania road season, so we're on the road.
Mr. William, how have you been?
Oh, about the same. I'm excited as ever. Busy personal life and excruciatingly slow time at work.
Fun times, fun times. Well, I spent the last couple of weeks bowling my butt off and also doing a few other extra projects outside of work. Haven't been on X lately, as many of you have seen. My apologies. Really hectic time of year for us, but hopefully things will be simmering down here in the next couple of weeks, especially, now that we should be taking advantage with football no longer in play. And Brian, man, what a interesting Super Bowl that was, wasn't it?
Oh, there was no Cleveland sports in my Super Bowl. Is there Super Bowl still? Is there playoffs still? We're not familiar with that in Cleveland. So
I was going to say, you guys have never seen a ring yet, right?
I was going to say, we have what's called championships from back in the day, but we've heard the legends. But
anyhow, yeah, it was definitely a little bit of a slow game for me. I mean, congratulations to the Seahawks for pretty much dominating that game. Very well earned. However, like we mentioned, we're on our way to the road to WrestleMania. And we got a little bit to talk about to get caught up. We know everybody in the dogs already talked about it, but hey, we're going to still talk about it because we want to keep our listeners up to date. So let's get right into it. This was a very short Royal Rumble card, folks. I can't believe it was only 4 matches, which I'm sure that's how it's been the last couple of years, but it seems like we always have like 5 or 6 on these, but it was a very slow one. We had for the women's Royal Rumble winner, Liv Morgan. For the men's, we had the Roman Reigns. And then for the undisputed WWE Championship, Drew McIntyre retains over Sami Zayn. And worst case scenario that we never thought would happen, Gunther retires AJ Styles. AJ Styles no longer able to wrestle in WWE. Quite a short card, but a lot of interesting things that have happened. Brian, why don't we start with your thoughts on how you felt Royal Rumble went?
Yeah, the Royal Rumble overall, it's one of my favorite PLEs, pay-per-views of the year, because it's so unpredictable. This year, I think they went in the right direction with Liv Morgan. I think that is she's never won one. She is a main event talent. So I do think that was the right choice in the win. I do believe, Sami Zayn losing to Drew McIntyre. Again, that's kind of a throwaway match and a way for Drew to stack another win against Sami Zayn and, to retain a championship defense there. I do want to plant the idea out there that WrestleMania is going to be in Saudi Arabia next year, I believe. So I do want to plant that idea that, since we are there this year for Royal Rumble, that they wanted to plant that and test that in that market of Sami Zayn being in a championship match there, just to see if that's a little tester market right there, just for that maybe at WrestleMania next year. So it doesn't mean that they're going that route, but that could be something WWE sometimes likes to play with to see how it would, if they could say, ooh, would Sami win a Royal Rumble next year? And could he be in a main event match? So I can see them maybe just using that as a tester. Very quick match though. And then ultimately then we, got the men's Royal Rumble match with Roman winning. That one did, I'm not surprised. I know that one's a little mixed for me. I thought that we could have went some other directions in that matchup. I thought there could have been a lot of different other wins. I didn't expect some of my younger talent that I chose in my predictions videos to win. I like to build a lot of younger talent. I don't think Roman needed this win to go on to main event with Punk. And, I know Punk Roman at Mania, that is a big marquee name, 2 name brands in a matchup, but I just don't know if that's a necessary, and then the other half is, I know Punk will be around, but is Roman going to be around for a, full schedule to be a champion? Or are we going to get kind of the part-time champion thing and into that? So that's just a couple things to think of. But, not taking away from Roman. He does good work when he, is around. It's just he's into that part of his career where he has the split focus. So I do kind of think that we could have went a couple different directions with that. But I do know my casual part-time fan friends that, they were geeking out over Roman, right? The ones that show up for Mania season, they were Tribal Chief and they were all excited. And that's who this Royal Rumble win was for, right? It wasn't for the ones that are here every day, every week cheering. I feel like those were for the, the part-timers fans that come in and, it's a name they recognize and they can, follow and get excited about. So I do understand what they were doing with that. And then finally, AJ Styles being retired by Gunther. I do like that choice. Gunther's on a roll of doing that. And, I'd like to see him continue that streak of retiring people and being the career killer. I like how they did it with being in WWE. I think this does unlock him being able to do some TNA work and, some other WWE friendly partnership companies. But, I do think, what else are we going to do with AJ Styles in WWE? I feel like we've been just kind of scraping up matches for him. We did throw him in, some matches in the past year, but, I think we said, oh, let's throw him in a match with Nakamura and let's throw him in. We've just been kind of scraping the barrel a little bit. So I feel like we just kind of been really digging, but I can't remember the last time we really found like a very solid, strong, well booked, laid out program for AJ Styles in a few years. So, maybe it is time to retire AJ in the WWE and allow him to try other avenues, to give him the matches that he wants to do. And I know he built a lot of his name brand in other companies. So that's my overall thoughts. How about you guys? Did you guys like the show? Did it lay flat with you? How'd you guys feel?
For me, it was kind of more of a thumbs in the middle type card. I felt like Liv Morgan was pretty much the easy choice as far as predicting the winner for the Women's Rumble. However, I find it interesting she has not yet decided which championship she's going for. So I have a feeling this might end up coming down to either the last week before Elimination Chamber, or it may be dependent on who the Women's Chamber winner is to determine which championship she wants to go after. So it's going to be very interesting to see which route Liv goes for. As far as the men's Rumble, I think I had Roman as my second choice of winning. I still wanted LA Knight to win. Unfortunately, he did not make it. However, I did want to give kudos to Oba Femi. I was not happy with the number they put him in at, but I felt they did a great job showing what a dominant force he could be, especially getting several eliminations in there. The unfortunate part is being eliminated by Brock Lesnar, and then Lesnar's eliminated by both Cody and LA Knight. I'm just like, oh man, just only if Oba stayed in there a little bit longer. But I still possibly see, if Brock's not in a championship match, we could possibly see the likelihood of Brock Lesnar taking on Oba Femi at WrestleMania. I think that would be a killer meet. What do they say? Big guy slap a meat or whatever. I would love to see that match and entertain the thought. Excuse me. As far as AJ Styles, I completely agree with you. I don't know how much more WWE can do with him. So maybe him moving on to another promotion, maybe even going back to TNA. There's lots of options out there for him. Excuse me again, folks. But as far as Sami Zayn and Drew McIntyre, I know there were a lot of people hoping it was going to be Sami winning this, but unfortunately, I was one that say, no, I can't imagine Drew's title reign going to go this short again. But I do like your theory that they were testing in Saudi with WrestleMania being in that general area next year. So it'll be it's one of those things where everyone should keep their eyes on what's going to happen with Sami here in the next year. But Will, let's get your thoughts.
All right. Well, I'm pretty much with you there, brother, as far as the show just kind of being you know, and there were no bad performances whatsoever. I'll just kind of get right into it. I'm going to go with the Rumble matches first. Liv Morgan, obviously, pretty much we knew that was going to be a thing. And the great thing about Liv Morgan being the winner of the Royal Rumble is she has had her career built to where she can rival just about anybody. And so there's so many avenues that she can go with. So I'm expecting, no matter what, it's just going to be a good show there. As far as the men's Royal Rumble, this one's bittersweet for me because I don't necessarily believe that it needed to be Roman to win. And that puts it Roman versus CM Punk, which I don't know how to feel about that because we went through the 4 years of, Roman being on top. And then you guys know how I feel about CM Punk. So for me, that's just kind of okay, whatever. All right. AJ Styles being retired by Gunther. I'm right there with you guys. And I, too, really like what you had to say about that, Brian. That is an interesting perspective to look at. I'm right there with you guys where he's just kind of been extended out as far as he can be, and he probably could be of great use in another promotion. And just, I'd rather see it be on his terms, like he said. And then Sami Zayn versus Drew McIntyre. I don't know that this match really needed to happen, but it is what it is. Drew's not going to drop that title anytime soon. So there was 50% of it I enjoyed, and the other 50% of it was just, it was a good show, but it wasn't anything massively great for me.
Yeah, and I'm with you. Some friends and I were talking a few weeks ago, and we were saying how there's not a lot of storytelling in these Rumble matches like there used to be years ago, where there were stories within the Rumble that happened that seemed to set up, like when the matches were over, they set up multiple matches at Mania, and you could just see them coming out of it, and or there was a lot happening in that match. And I feel like nowadays Rumble just kind of happens because they say, well, it built itself. There's almost like not a Pat Patterson there to lay these things out. And I don't know who's in charge of the Rumble matches anymore since Pat's not around to do those. But, now almost it's like they let them happen, but then they, really go to the Elimination Chamber and they really put a lot of focus there, at least last year, right? As we've seen how that unfolded. And I feel like they're almost like kind of shifting right to the Elimination Chamber now as being kind of a bigger thing of their focus. How you guys feel on that?
No, I totally agree. It seems because we all know Elimination Chamber is the next big thing that comes up, especially before WrestleMania, because after the winners have decided who they want to challenge at WrestleMania, then obviously it's not to degrade it, but it's the consolation prize now of who gets to face the other champion. And so, I do see a lot of interesting things coming up here on this chamber card coming up in 2 weeks, I believe now. So, but yeah, William, do you have anything to respond to Ryan on that?
Really just kind of totally in agreement. I think my favorite times for Rumbles, for building those, like you were talking about, was in the 90s.
And speaking of elimination card or chamber, Well, we kind of get a little more up to date with the current card as we're sitting. Um, for the World Heavyweight Championship, CM Punk is going to give yet another opportunity to Finn Balor there. So this is going to be an interesting case if Finn Balor somehow gets the victory, but I don't see it happening, especially with Roman's so much hatred for CM Punk now. But and then we go on to the women's Intercontinental Championship match. AJ Lee is going to challenge the champion, the man, Becky Lynch. Will she be able to keep her streak going and manage to pick up the title? Who knows? And then we have the women's elimination match, and I find this one weird because the men's chamber match is listed 6 participants, but as I was looking online earlier, the women was only showing 4, which I don't think that's right. It's always been 6. But so far for the women, Tiffany Stratton, Rhea Ripley, Alexa Bliss are the first 3 to qualify for the women's chamber. There's 3 more, I'm sure, to be determined. And then for the men, this is quite interesting. Randy Orton, LA Knight, and then just most recently from SmackDown, Cody Rhodes are now moving on to the chamber, and 3 more also to be determined. And so far, given that, kind of would like to get your guys' thoughts on who the remaining 3 for both the men and women would be. And why don't we start off with William on that?
So as far as the women's remaining 3, I'm not really particularly sure how that would go. I would think that they would maybe throw Raquel in with everything that's been going on. I could see them possibly bringing Bailey into it. As far as anybody else, I don't know that there's anybody besides maybe a return that could possibly go in there, like Naomi. But we all know that's probably not going to be the case. As far as the men go, I can tell you who I'm rooting for. I'm always rooting for Randy Orton, but I'm pretty sure it's going to end up being Cody that takes that. That's just my early prediction. And there's a whole lot of people you could throw in there right now that could be in contention. You could throw yet again another Sami Zayn in there. You could throw Jacob Fatu. There's just so many options. And right now, with everything that's going on, I would actually like to see Obafemi in there too.
And first off, I want to give you both a bad monkey for not telling me I had the picture frames wrong. I had Brian on the wrong side and me on the wrong side, but William was still in the middle. But no, those are some interesting thoughts there, Will. One thing I do want to kind of tap on to you when you mentioned return, let's also not forget Bianca Belair still looking to come back.
Yeah, that was the other one I had in the mind, and it slipped it.
No, you're good. And, there was a lot of disappointment that Bianca Belair was not in the Rumble. And I think it was for good reason for her to still kind of be sure that she's going to be 100%, and giving her that time for Elimination Chamber is setting it up just right. As far as the other 2, I kind of like the idea where you're going with Raquel Rodriguez, especially with there's a Raquel Gonzalez. I can never remember which last name they give her anymore, but
it's Rodriguez now. It was Gonzalez before.
Yeah, I really hate it when they change their names because it always sticks with me. But I like your idea of Raquel, especially with the turmoil that was there on Raw not too long ago, especially when Raquel was pretty upset with Liv eliminating her and Liv trying to manipulate her into saying, I know you're not a selfish person. It's like, oh boy, it's every woman for themselves. So yeah, there's always going to be selfishness going on in our Rumble. Another one I probably wouldn't mind seeing is Charlotte Flair, only because, she eliminated Alexa Bliss from the Rumble. there's another one I think could possibly happen, especially if things go right. But I also think there's possible chance for Io Sky to be making the Rumble, especially with being tag team partner with Rhea Ripley and them holding the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships. As far as the men go, I I don't know. There's still, I think that one could be almost anyone's game right now, especially when you got members of the Vision who probably still want to find someone to get in there. We already know Theory's not going to make it. There's still a possible chance. Who knows? Logan Paul and Bronson Reed maybe finding a way to sneak in there. Um, but yeah, man, my mind is drawing a blank who the other men could be. Jimmy Uso, recently you heard his brother, Jay Uso, you heard from Jimmy after they successfully defended against Alpha Academy, give the speech to his brother that, hey, you're not done here. You need to get back into that main event picture and go to WrestleMania to get another world championship around your waist. So that there could be a possibility Jay Uso is going to find his way in there. As far as a 6-man, I don't know. I have this weird feeling some way, somehow Brock Lesnar will end up in there. But, that's the great thing about the men's side here is so much can be done with that, with the couple of weeks they have left for qualification. Brian, let's go right to you and get your thoughts.
Yeah. So, I do think Punk will win over Balor, and I'm excited for the Becky AJ Lee match. But then for the women's chamber match, I could see Rhea Ripley, taking it. I could see Tiffany Stratton finding her way, or any of the other new ones. I think you guys brought up some good ones there. I do think Raquel Rodriguez could be an entrant in there. A lot of times I feel like, if they add anybody to these chambers that isn't going to win at this point, they're just adding them to try to boost, the chamber value, right? Like they're going to add somebody and, oh my gosh, they're going to add this person, kind of more of a shock value. But Randy, for the guys, Randy Orton and Cody, I'm interested to see their interactions in the chamber because I still want that match. Is that Mania match this year? Could we get Randy Orton and Cody this year? Could something happen in this chamber? I know people feel that that's a title match, but that match doesn't need the title, in my opinion. And that match could be Cody's Mania match, and the championship is clearly off Cody right now. And Drew does have the title. But then the question becomes, well, who do we put Drew with? Is it an LA Knight? Do we give LA Knight a Mania spot? It's not the main Mania matchup because that's Roman and Punk. So do we just give LA Knight a taste? And do we allow Drew to win that match, right? Because I think Drew is very well protected right now. And I think they would, my opinion, I think they value Drew a little more than Knight. I think Jey Uso is an option to be added to the chamber. I don't know if they would put him in a main championship matchup again at Mania for a second year in a row, but I do see them adding him to this match just because, he has the kid crowd and the fans like his entrance but they would eliminate him. And then it's easy because they say, well, go back to the championship and the tag team, right? So it's a very easy, hey, have him for a one-off and then throw him back in the tag division. And at Mania, they could have a fun tag match with him, right? They could put him with the Hardys or put him with whoever, right? You could have a fun match with any tag team. So I think it's a very safe bet to put Jey Uso in this matchup, and it doesn't hurt his credibility to lose it at all. So, and then as far as the other participants, you could have really anybody. I would keep Oba Femi away from this matchup and guys like that. You got to be very protective of him coming in. I'm very protective of guys like that because even though they're so dominant, they're so new, you don't want to hurt their street cred. So you got to keep them protected and not really taking pinfalls because and unfortunately, this is an elimination match, right? They have to be pinned or submitted, right? It's different in the Rumble when they can just be thrown over a rope. People aren't going to really hate on that. So And if you want him to go against, like you guys mentioned earlier, Brock Lesnar, well, we can't let him get pinned in a chamber match like this and then, have to go against Brock Lesnar. Unless you did something with both of them in this chamber match to where they were just eliminated due to tearing each other apart. But I don't know if they would do something like that in the chamber. So those are kind of my rough thoughts. It's kind of hard to predict these last few, but they don't want to make it too predictable. But I think they're just going to kind of throw guys in there. I think the ones for the guys that are already in there, I think it's one of those guys that's going to win, in my opinion. That's already announced.
The spoiler alert from Brian, the hype ballad there, folks. So, but yeah, like you mentioned, and I've said earlier, it's really anybody's game for the remaining spots. And this is kind of the part I really like, is to be a little more surprised rather than seeing it be pretty predictable. So yeah, let's hope something changes up here, and who knows, might throw even some different direction in what many of the IWC was predicting for the WrestleMania main events.
Well, and just to be fair, even if that's a spoiler, this is where they throw me off and they make Seth Rollins hobble out on crutches and then, throw his crutches and get in there and win everything. Right. So, so that's, and I'll be like, well, never mind. So.
Do you have anything else to throw in there, Will?
No, sir.
All right. Well, let's go on. And some things we have not talked about lately but now let's make sure we start giving them some love. We've been a little more WWE talk lately, but I'd like to show AEW some love finally. They had some interesting things go on this week. Kyle Fletcher once again regains the TNT championship from Tommaso Ciampa. And for those who've been sitting in the closet were not aware, Tommaso Ciampa being in AEW happened just a couple of weeks ago. He showed up after Mark Briscoe successfully defended a open challenge of the TNT championship. Goes on to challenge Mark Briscoe for that championship in Collision and manages to defeat Mark Briscoe to become the champion. And unfortunately, he only had an 11-day reign, and we'll talk about it a little later. Well, actually, we'll talk about it now. Kyle Fletcher defeats Tommaso Ciampa on Dynamite earlier this week to become the two-time AEW TNT champion. But this is the one that shocked me the most. AEW has new women's world champion. Tekla ends up defeating Chris Statlander for the championship in a strap match. And I did not have that on my bingo card this week. William, did you watch Dynamite this week at all?
I did.
What was your overall thoughts on that?
That was definitely the big shocker of the night. And I would actually go and call that the actual biggest shock of the week. I did not see them putting Tekla up this soon, but they did. So what I'm hoping comes out of this is one heck of a retaliation match. But it was quite a brutal match. It was fun to watch.
It was. It was just nothing short of. There was no dull moment. We'll just say that on Dynamite this week. In fact, same with Grand Slam. Grand Slam that happened last night. And I'm going to take my eyes away from the camera. Sorry, folks. But I just want to kind of go down the card that happened at Grand Slam Australia last night. The Continental Championship match went to a time limit draw between Jon Moxley and Takeshita. But Mox ends up still remaining the AEW Continental Champion. The AEW Women's World Tag Team Championship match. This was a killer one. If you haven't watched it, definitely go back and watch that event. But the Babes of Wrath successfully retain over Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford. However, shortly after that match, we get a possible new member with Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford. Lena Cross has become all elite and joined the two heels there. for the AEW World Title #1 contender match, Hangman Adam Page doing cowboy shit, getting the victory over Andrade El Idolo. The loser gets a head shaved. The mixed tornado tag match. Orange Cassidy and Tony Storm defeats the team of Wheeler Yuta and Marina Shafir. And since Yuta took the pin, he's the one that got his head shaved. In the AEW TNT Championship ladder match, Kyle Fletcher defending the championship less than 72 hours after having it, successfully climbs up, grabs the championship, defeating Mark Briscoe once again. And for the AEW World Championship, MJF retains over Big Bad Brody King. That was a hell of a card they had last night. And William, did you watch any of that last night?
I actually watched it when I got home from fishing earlier.
And your general thoughts?
I'm in complete agreement with you about a lot of it. Some notable things: the Orange Cassidy, tornado match with Tony Storm and Yuta and Marina. It ended up being exactly what I expected it to be. Brutal match for the ladder match. I was a little bit surprised that they did that brain buster from as high as they did. That actually kind of looked nasty. Loved the Hangman Idolo match. There was one point where I was a little bit worried that Idolo come down a little too quick. Everything about this whole card was fantastic. The final match, MJF with Brody, absolute gold. I think this shun a light on Brody that hasn't really been allowed to be shunned before for future. We already knew what he was capable of, but this really kind of cemented how great he can show out on a main card.
Well, and let's also give MJF some love, because no matter what you think of him, he defeated Brody pretty well on his own. He didn't really have that much. He didn't really cheat that much in this match, which was surprising, other than trying to attempt to use the dynamite diamond ring, but that did not work out at all, since Bryce Remsburg caught him and took that ring away from him.
Yeah, no, I think this whole thing was well played.
It was well done. Brian, did you watch this at all?
No, I didn't. But when I hear you go over the results, the one thing that sticks out to me the most is they're letting the right people win, right? They're letting the right protected people win, right? Because you have to protect your brand. But what I also hear is they're developing younger talent, right? So, and even you mentioned it with Dynamite, earlier in the week with, Tekla, right? Like pushing these younger stars. And I'm hearing that, and I'm kind of proud of AEW for that, because they're realizing they're refreshing this brand a little bit, but they're still sticking with their guys that they trust, like their Moxes and their MJFs and, their guys that they built their brand around. But they're letting these people win that are the right people. And like their Kyle Fletchers, the guys that I call their up and comers that are kind of in that middle card. And I think that's just very smart, and those are what I call the slow grow guys, the Kyle Fletchers. They're in the middle. They're going to be there for a little while. And someday they're going to be the main events of the AEW brand. I can see that a few years down the road. But so when I hear those results, I'm like, yeah, every one of those made sense. And from what Will described, it sounds like from top to bottom, there wasn't a bad match on the card.
No, that was the thing, is, like I mentioned earlier, there was really no dull moment on AEW's programming this week. Whatever they did, they need to keep doing that, because this kind of felt like more like this should have been a pay-per-view show. And we got it for free. Well, I guess you can't really say free unless you're somehow proxy VPNing it. But no, for what you got on HBO Max, or if you were watching it from, I think it was TNT or TBS, I mean, this was really awesome, and it was great, very great for a non-pay-per-view event. Would you agree, Will?
Absolutely. That one, they definitely could have made some big bucks on. That was a killer show.
Yeah, before we move on to our next topic, we're just going to take a little break and give some few things out here. You're watching us here live this week only on my personal X account, WFI Pod. I'm trying to get everyone to move over to the FOPW network account. If you haven't gone and followed that account, please do so you can watch our lives going on in the future on the X app. But we're also live on our YouTube channel at Wrestling Fans Insight. And be sure to go subscribe and get notifications every time we release a new episode. And follow us on the X app. You can follow me at WFI Pod and at FOP Network. William?
At William Hoppy 8.
Yeah, Mr. Brian.
At the Brian Adkins.
And be sure to go check out and participate in our X community for the fans of pro wrestling. You can find it under the account at FOPW Network. I also have it spotlighted on my personal at WFI Pod. Also, be sure to go join Carlos and the Wrestle Collective, our partners in the fans of pro wrestling. Carlos hosts Raw Reactions with Carlos on Monday shortly after Raw, and also Wednesday Night Chaos shortly after AEW Dynamite. Go check out his accounts at C to the 77 or Conquer the No. Also, check out the Wrestle Collective's account, which I don't have on here yet, but I will shortly, at DUBC Worldwide. Also, be sure to follow Brian's YouTube channel, Tap Out Talk, at Tap Out Talk. Brian does a lot of great content there, usually after PLEs and pay-per-views. We also have a group chat on the X for the fans of pro wrestling. Just get with me, Carlos, or Brian on how to join. It's not hard. Just don't be a little peckerhead, as most people would say. But anyways, moving on now. This is going to be kind of a fun one to talk about because of some interesting events the last couple of weeks, not just for WWE, but for AEW as well. Most recently, for those who follow NXT, you notice no longer Ava Reigns is the general manager for that brand. And the minute she left, she had no problem letting out some of her political thoughts on X before she deactivated her account. It came down to saying F ICE, which seems to be the common thing. Now, I'm for one to say, don't ever be afraid to express your political side. I just don't think doing it like while you're on the job or in sports is the right way to do it. I've never been a fan of that, but I don't also think employers should ever hold their employees down when they're voicing their opinions on their personal time. However, we got the same thing going on with AEW. Brody King, most notably famous for abolishing ICE. More recently, something to do with police officers. It sounded like hang all police officers, which I don't know what the exact content is that. I just seen it briefly reported, especially from Aaron's Love Wrestling on the X app. He's been pretty vocal about saying he does not plan to support Brody King until Brody King apologizes, which I don't think you're going to see that happen anytime soon. But this brings up a lot of interesting topic. Brian, you and I have always mentioned we don't like to bring our political views to pretty much to the platform, especially when we're doing these podcasts and interviews. But yeah, I mean, this has been kind of a interesting few weeks in the wrestling world. To me, I just, like I mentioned, for me, I don't think this is something that should be done while on the job. But I know many people see different. But what's your thoughts on everything that's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to see any of this kind of blur the lines into the wrestling world, and the reason is because wrestling, at least for me, and I think this is the same way for most wrestling fans, this is an escape from that world. It's an escape from the day to day. And this is our entertainment. And this is our way to unwind at the end of the day and kind of close out the world and say, I want to relax. I want to watch wrestling. And I just want to be in this little world. And I want to watch good guys versus bad guys. And I want to watch, this little box on my TV. And I just want to watch these storylines unfold. And that's a nice escape that a lot of people and fans of that product have done since their childhood, right? And then they've even utilized that to form friendships, right? And they've formed like a lot of, just ways of life. And they've used that as a way to kind of just unwind at the end of the day. So there's a lot of people in today's modern society that sometimes need a break from this kind of stuff. And because that's what they see, right? They see it on their social media feeds and they see it in their worlds when they walk around in their sidewalks and everywhere they go. So, a lot of times this is the escape for people, right? Just like reading a book. So for it to kind of blur into that, I like it when it doesn't for those people because, I can appreciate the need for people and what this means for those fans and for those people. So that's kind of my take on it and what I don't want wrestling to not be that for people. So that's why I like, when it doesn't blur the lines of that. So I do see the aspect of trying to keep that outside of the wrestling world and making sure that it doesn't represent itself on TV in that manner.
William?
All right. Well, obviously, I mean, I have my standpoint as far as politics go. However, I do not believe that has any place in any non-political institution. I don't believe that should be forced upon by any kind of influencer or anybody who has any kind of public standing. It's just really no place for that. Politics belong with politicians. And it just kind of blurs our everyday fun that we get to have, like you guys were saying. That's our escape.
Yeah, and it's just we're already bogged down with the political crap on social media as is. The last thing I really need to do is watch it on our TVs or even watching in character mode when our favorite wrestling characters are on the platform engaging with fans. Again, it's one thing to do it on your own personal time, but when I'm sitting here and I'm seeing punishment from even those when they're being punished for doing it on their personal time, I don't think that's cool. But anyways,
let me add another layer just real quick to it. Just a food for thought for anybody that's listening. If you go to meet a wrestling personality in a working sense, and I get grumpy when my wrestling's interrupted, right? Like in a sense, I hate ads. You guys know that we talked about it. I hate ads that pop up during matches. I hate, on canvases and tights and anything that distracts me. But, if you were to, as a fan, go pay to have a meet and greet with a wrestler, right? That's your time that you paid for. How are you spending the time with them? Right? Are you saying, hey, what's your opinion of? Are you paying your time to get your opinion of those kind of items? Or I know me, I've never brought any items like that up with any wrestlers. I've always kind of talked about wrestling, I have had conversations about football teams, because I knew they were same fans as I was as far as Cleveland sports, that kind of stuff. But so, I mean, I always kind of think about like, well, what would I know that conversation would be that they would enjoy, but also, what is that valued time right there? And what would be, if I was actually, what kind of conversation would I want to have and interact with? And so kind of to what Will said, you are allowed to have opinions on things, but, keep it in mind what people are here for and keep it in mind what is being forced on to people in that sense. So.
All right, let's end this one on a better note. For those who were not aware, TNA had a on their TNA Plus app or a pay-per-view for some other platforms. They had their No Surrender card happen Friday evening, and I thought it was a really fun one. And I was gonna eventually kind of say it would have been cool to have some play-by-play, which didn't happen for almost over half the card because poor Tom and Matt were talking and they could probably hear each other through the headset, but nothing was coming through the TV. But after the way this show started, where I had our pictures in the wrong frames, I shouldn't be talking about, making sure everything's in place before you go on air. So I'm going to eat my own advice, but I'm still going to say it. That's why it's always important to check things before you go broadcast. But nonetheless, it still was a fun card overall. I think the audio finally started working once they got to the Eric Young and BTE match. But going down the card for the pre-show, Sinner and Saint, which I think they must be from Utah with that team name. They defeat the team of Brad Attitude in TW3, and Frankie Kazarian gets the victory over Allen Angels. And in the main card for the TNA Knockouts #1 contender Battle Royal, Jody Threat ends up eliminating Tessa Blanchard to become the Battle Royal winner and the #1 contender for the TNA Knockouts Championship. For the TNA International Championship, Trey McGill, who just recently re-signed after having a brief contract with AEW, he ends up defeating the champion Channing Stacks Lorenzo in what was a really interesting impromptu match. Mance Warner defeats Action Mike Jackson. By the way, Action Mike Jackson in his 70s, folks, wrestling on a TNA pay-per-view, but also huge props and mad respect to Mance Warner and Steph DeLander for the sportsmanship they showed to Action Mike Jackson right after that match. TNA Knockouts World Tag Team Championship, the Elegance brand retains over the team of Indy Hartwell and Zaya Brookside. Eric Young defeats BDE. And this is the shocker here that I think nobody saw coming. The TNA Knockouts Championship, Ariana Grace ends up defeating Lei Yingli for the TNA Knockouts Championship. I cannot believe I'm hearing myself say that, but it did happen, folks. 8-man tag match. Order 4 ends up defeating the team of the Hardy Boys and the Righteous. And in the main event, tag team match, Mike Santana, the TNA champion, and the TNA X Division champion, Leon Slater, defeats the team of Nick Nemeth and Eddie Edwards. And a couple of shockers there as we see TNA gain one of their championships back from NXT talent just to have another championship go from TNA to NXT talent. I always find that interesting, but this was the shocker. Ariana Grace becomes the TNA Knockouts champion. William, I know you're a big NXT person. What do you think of this?
Okay, well, I've been watching ever since Ariana even debuted for a tryout, right? And over the time, I've watched her actually become quite the good wrestler. She just hasn't been properly placed. And recently, there's been an uprising of them utilizing her. So it's not that surprising to me. I just thought the buildup would be a lot bigger for something like this for her. I am happy for her.
And overall, that entire card that I mentioned, what was your thoughts, even though you never watched it?
Sounded like a pretty interesting card. Seems like there was a few just holy crap moments and then some pretty solid wrestling.
And Brian, I know NXT kind of sometimes your booty call, but could you even imagine Ariana Grace capturing the TNA Knockouts Championship?
No. And again, I didn't see any of those results this week, but yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of switching and flip flopping around between the brands there. And did you say Indy Hartwell won her match as well?
No, her and Zaya Brookside fell short to the Elegance brand.
Okay, I was curious on that one just to kind of see how they book her in the future. So yeah, but sounds like they're establishing. I like that they're keeping their partnership with NXT because I do think that's going to be very key for them going into 2026. But I'm kind of just there's so much wrestling to watch, right? And I pick and choose right now, especially with Mania season. But right now with TNA. I do need to tag into it a little bit just to kind of, check in. There are a few wrestlers I do enjoy over there, but yeah, I haven't seen any of these guys with their newer stuff.
And I figured I'd give TNA some love because we haven't done it in quite some time. But I wanted to say, despite the technical difficulties with no play-by-play for, well over half the card, I thought they did a really outstanding job putting on some great matches. So, and giving us a big shocker there. So, a round of applause definitely for TNA on that card. Now with that said, guys, I cannot believe we somehow got this under an hour, even despite being gone for 3 weeks, but it's been a really great week talking wrestling with you two. But as we always go into our end segment here, I want to go into our final thoughts and shout outs. And William, why don't we start with you if you have any of the two there?
As far as my final thoughts, I'm loving everything that's been going on lately. I'd like to see them push things a little bit further and just keep the momentum going, especially with WrestleMania season. AEW, like Brian said, I want to see them keep going. I wouldn't mind getting around to TNA. I just don't know that I have the time.
Yeah, and good point. There's, like Brian mentioned, there's so much wrestling out there, it's hard to keep up. But I watch what I can. I wish I had the time like Stampede does to watch almost everything out there and able to rank everything. Unfortunately, I don't. I get too much in life going on, but I still love to come on podcast and talk about it. But Brian, your final thoughts and shout outs?
Yeah, a couple things. So first for AEW, kind of mentioned earlier, just, keep the momentum of building the right young talent, molding them with your trusted talent. I use that term. That's my new term for AEW. Use the trusted talent, the trusted main event talent. You guys know who I'm referencing there, but make sure you're using trusted talent. And then with WWE, I really want Mania to be Mania again. And, I'm watching, I'm still waiting for those storylines to kick in and those major, I want everything on the card to have a real storyline again. We're still in that corporate-y phase. And, I wonder if we're going to get out of the, I know we're booking things, but I really want everything to have, I miss the old days of, when I think was Chris Jericho, Pete and William Regal's T, right? And that was a storyline, right? And when he was general manager. So I missed everything having a storyline. And then we found out why people, had a match on a card. So I would like to see Mania have that going forward and that card will build. So, but we're going to watch that. I heard ticket sales are low. So, I am keeping an eye on that side story outside of the wrestling news, but we'll see if ticket sales go up. They should lower tickets. But other than that, thank you everybody that watches us each week. So.
I want to kind of get into a couple of final thoughts. Like I said, be sure to go support wrestling, especially the stuff you like. If there's something you don't like, don't watch it. I mean, pretty simple thing to ask. Another thing is, if you're attending events out there, and it's been seen on the last couple of weeks, it's one thing to be a heckler, but it's also another to be crude and harassing, especially when security tells you this is the last time they're going to tell you to stop doing certain things. Please just be a fan of wrestling, but don't go out of whack with the way you cheer and boo and all the other stuff. You know, be decent person out there. It's not hard. As far as my shout outs, I want to give a big shout out again to the Wrestle Collective, Carlos, who's been a big member of it. But also they do a lot of great content on the X, also YouTube and other platforms. Same with the DWE Connections, Miami the Great, Final Boss Lady, EVP CJ. They do some great stuff as well. Be sure to go check out some of the stuff they do. Also, big shout out to Fan in the Van podcast, Two Dudes Sports News, Steel and Tail Talk, Brutally Honest Sports, In a Pickle Pod, Nate's Daily Wager, Visit Vegas Places with Coil, Average Joe Sports, and also a huge shout out to the Wager Warrior family. I attended a few of their X spaces this week, which was really awesome. And I know there could be something here in the next weekend or so where I may be jumping in on a Saturday show, and we're going to talk some old school wrestling. So if you're on the X app, be sure to check out the Wager Wire, especially Carol Bucks, Billy, Amber Holly, Rosie Blue Eye, J.S. McMahon, James McMahon, also Brian Davis, who likes to talk hockey quite a bit. Go check out that entire group. They're a really great community and have some excellent spaces going on almost every day. So jump on the X if you're not there yet. And last but not least, also want to give a local shout out to one of our favorite sports time talk show host, Hans Olsen, who also used to play for BYU Cougars, and I believe he had a short stint there with the Indianapolis Colts. He, after 12 years spending some time on the radio sports talk with Scott Gerard, has decided to move on. I loved Hans as a local radio talk host. He always had some great insights on sports, especially on a morale standpoint. Hans, we're going to definitely miss you here in Utah, and I hope your future endeavors go really well here. But whew, that was a mouthful. Almost need another full bottle or two of water here, as I'm going to be getting on the ham radio shortly after this broadcast. But William, Brian, thank you as always for joining me. I appreciate you guys coming on, talking some more shenanigans with wrestling with us. But to the rest of you, thank you for tuning in and making us get up there in the ranks again on Good Pods. It's been quite the adventure, even though we haven't done much broadcast the last couple of weeks. We are going to hopefully be a little more consistent this year and produce more episodes. So without any further ado, we wish you all well and a good night.